It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. And it's a Friday, so it's Friday with DB, Derek Bell, joining the show as well. You know what? Actually, we should hit up Brandon Ross and say, hey, can we get a Friday-specific voiceover that also includes the name Derek Bell in there? But anyways, Derek, how we doing, pal?
Doing good, man. Headed to Pittsburgh on Monday.
Yes, sir.
Got an exciting weekend, too. You know, some Halloween festivities before I leave. So ready to talk some ball. Should be a fun game.
Halloween festivities, and then the daughter's first Steelers game. Very much looking forward to that. And shout out to our boy Pat, making sure that you guys get on the field after the game for that one as well. Looking forward to that. Alan, how we doing?
Doing good. I have no Halloween festivities. I did. My daughter did get up. We went pumpkin patch and got pumpkins, and we carved them. Staple. My daughter and wife very intricately designed, you know, with the tracing and the, you know, it's a witch and it's a ghost. And I just have like a large, demented looking smiley face and two eyes. And that's it. That's all I got.
Fitting.
Very fitting. I'm a simple pumpkin man.
Wait, hold on. I'm thinking back now. I don't even know if Derek mentioned this because maybe he didn't catch this. There was an episode. Was that last week, Alan, where you were sipping on a Raising Cane's cup? And you mentioned that you made a pit stop at a Raising Cane's for Derek.
Yeah,
it was kind of like a.
I knew
left a
about
little
it.
Easter egg in an episode for you to see if you would watch.
I knew about it.
No, I knew about it only because someone DM'd me on Twitter.
Oh, wow.
Said, did you see that Alan was at Raising Cane's? And I said no, but I'm not watching the episode now because I don't support anything Raising Cane's related. Now, speaking, just the last thing before we get into this on the pumpkin thing, man, I'm like the least artistic person of all time. So like, I can't even draw a stick figure. So I choose to not do like branch out in any artistic festivities.
I think my 7-year-old nephew might have something here. I got 3 drawings sitting right. By the way, love how much Steelers ball we're talking here to kick off this episode. But my 7-year-old nephew Jackson, this is the Penguins logo, according to Jackson. Not too bad.
Solid.
Yeah.
Solid.
This is Leo Messi.
Dude, that's
could never do that.
And this is some character in Fortnite. I don't know.
I'm not.
But yeah, actually, those first 2 he would have done when he was 6 as well. So yeah, not too bad. I think that we might have an artist in the family. Anyways, let's get into some ball. Derek, I'm excited for you to be here, pal. We're gonna talk about this game, dive into it, preview it, matchups that we like, all that good stuff that we typically do on Friday. But want to go into the injury report first and foremost, just to give you guys an update as we do throughout the week. Keeanu, Benton, DeShon, Elliott both seem to be relatively okay. I'm not saying that they're 100% healthy, but they were back in practice in a limited capacity today, Alan. I'm not going to say for sure we got a green light there, but looks pretty good for them to both be able to go.
They seem fine. I'm not concerned about either one of their playing status. Like you said, maybe they'll be playing at less than 100%, but I expect them both to play.
Mm-hmm. Derek, how important are those 2 players?
Extremely. I mean, I think that the Steelers have an advantage against the Giants' offensive line as it stands. But, you know, I just think that the more depth that you can have, I kind of think that, you know, if you want to read into the narrative that like Russ was kind of shaking off the rust in the first half last week and that this offense is really close to kind of putting a full game together, I think that they could get up early on this Giants team for some specific reasons, which we can talk about. And then from there, it's really just letting your pass rushers tee off. And like the more of those guys that you have available is obviously awesome. And then I just think like DeShon Elliott, someone asked me yesterday on Twitter, I thought it was a good question about like whether him or Dan Moore has been the more impressive player given the expectations coming into the season. And I certainly think that Moore has played solid football, but I think the difference between those 2 guys is Moore, I think, has certainly improved, and I think he has showing more consistency than he has in the past. But the difference is Elliott is stepping into a role in which we have seen other players operate within before because it's the same scheme. And he is playing, in my opinion, above the scheme. Like he's making players that other guys in this role haven't made in years past. And I think he's legitimately been, like, of all the tape that I've watched, not saying I've seen every game of every team, but he's been one of the best safeties in the league, full stop, to me. Making plays in the backfield. He's been really reliable in coverage, been an excellent tackler. I think he's only missed one tackle on the season. So there's just a lot to like about that. But I think, the Steelers defense is getting healthier. Alex Highsmith, who I'm writing about for Steelers Now, is really close to 100%. And I think that there were some really, really encouraging signs from him last week against the Jets. So yeah, seems like things are coming together quite nicely for the defense.
And then on the other side of that, one guy that I would say that we don't expect to see this weekend, and who knows when we will, is Roman Wilson. Also didn't practice again today with that hamstring injury that flared up on him. Anything else to add to that, whether it is just about Roman himself or the state of the wide receiver room?
I mean, nothing, I think, on top of what we talked about yesterday regards to Roman, other than, obviously it doesn't look like he's going to play this week with back-to-back DNPs here after aggravating that hamstring on Wednesday. And like we talked about yesterday, second time around with any injury, like it usually takes some time. It would not shock me if we see Roman Wilson on the injured reserve by the end of the week.
Yeah. Derek, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, obviously it's disappointing just because the injuries and stuff have really, piled up for him or whatever. But I mean, at this point, like, it's kind of just like the train's already like moving so quickly that if he does take a stint on the injured reserve, it's not necessarily shutting the door, but he would probably like be someone that I even said like a couple weeks ago, I felt like really in order for him to get significant snaps, it would probably like take an injury just because he's so behind where they really need to be. I know we've said it multiple times on this podcast. I've talked about it too. It's really difficult for like rookies. Whenever you miss time in the summer, it's just like it feels like those guys are always playing catch up. And now that he's missed so much time, like during the season too, it feels inevitable that like it just seems like a project, for 2025, and you let him compete for a role, probably next year.
Alan, I got a DM from somebody that must watch or listen to the show. The account has like 10 followers. But they DM me and said, broke, limited Larry, woke, no cardio cam, galaxy brain, red shirt Roman.
I had somebody message me and say, Roman Wilson is the Steelers fan base's Roman Empire. Which is really
Jesus
good.
Christ.
It's just like something that doesn't matter that you think about way more than you should. Perfect. At least for this.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's flip it to the other side of things and start talking about the Giants injuries that they're dealing with. Brian Burns, the edge rusher that we know is going to cause a lot of problems. We talked about, obviously, already know Kayvon Thibodeau. Dexter Lawrence, who was a limited participant at least today after not practicing yesterday, gets back to practice in some capacity. But still, as we sit here right now, just a couple days away from the game, Brian Burns at DNP on a Friday. I know you got the extra day because of the game being on Monday night, but that doesn't bode well, whether it be for his chance of actually playing or at least in a full capacity.
Yeah, I think with Burns, if you're looking at this matchup, it's kind of like, for me, I kind of think of like, okay, how could the Steelers lose this game? Because, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's a hot take to say that the Steelers, as currently constructed, no Andrew Thomas for the Giants, that's their best player. I think, like, just you look at it on paper, like, the Steelers are a more talented roster than the Giants are. So then you look at, like, okay, how could the Steelers lose this game? I think you look at the Giants pass rush, their ability to kind of make things a little bit chaotic with their front. No Kayvon Thibodeau, huge. And then no Brian Burns, potentially, or at least a limited version of Brian Burns. And one of the things about Burns is that he's never quite been able to be that kind of alpha pass rusher in terms of like can impact a game every single play, like the elites of the elites, the TJ Watts, the Myles Garretts, like the Nick Bosa's, that type. But he's always been like one of those like tier 2, tier 3 type of guys. And I think the reason for that is because like he can get a lot of quick pressures. So like he has a lot of flashy type plays that like almost like make you kind of take a step back a little bit. And I think even like next gen stats, I know he got off to a little bit of a slow start this season, but he's got 17 quick pressures. So like quick pressures as defined by them are under 3 seconds. Basically, you're getting there at the drop back of the quarterback, and he's tied for second in the NFL in quick pressures. So like quick pressures are typically the ones that are more difficult for quarterbacks to navigate through. Those are the ones that sometimes can turn into like turnovers, like rushed interceptions or maybe a forced fumble, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I think no Burns would be, a boost for Dan Moore potentially, and then maybe, Broderick Jones as well.
Yeah, I think the combination of Burns and Dexter Lawrence has kind of made both of them better. Like you're saying, like I think Burns is like an incomplete but very, very good player. But like the plays where he's not getting pressure, he's taking so much attention that you have that big guy in the middle. But I think they've really played off each other very nicely. And the idea, like I think not having one of them or not having one of them at 100% really hurts the whole for the Giants. They have a really good thing going with that defensive line, but I think you start to pull pieces out of it. Already missing Thibodeau, now maybe Burns. Lawrence banged up too. He didn't practice yesterday, was limited in practice today. I don't know, man. I'm with you. I think the Steelers are a better team on paper, and I'm honestly like scrounging to find ways that they could possibly like mess this up somehow.
I wanted to ask you about, well, Derek, you kind of went into that because you were talking about the matchup that he could have, whether it be with Dan Moore Jr. or Broderick Jones. Because I was going to ask you, since Thibodeau went down, have they moved sides with Burns, or is it kind of just like him always over the left tackle and Ojulari over the right, or how have they been deployed?
Yeah, I mean, Ojulari's kind of been a good player for them, and like he was somebody that I really liked coming out of college. It's just like he didn't stay healthy at all. So like that has been an issue. I actually think that at least it seems like to me, I'm looking it up right now on Pro Football Focus, but it seems like to me they've rotated him over there less than they had previously. Because it seemed like when Thibodeau was in there, it was a little bit more split. I think it's kind of maybe a matchup thing for them too. Just looking at like Pro Football Focus, it looks like the majority of the snaps have came on the right side of the defense these past couple of weeks. So that would be against Dan Moore. Ojulari's had, I think Ojulari is kind of, I don't want to say getting lucky, but because he's played like good football, especially for a guy who's missed so much time. It's just like he's getting an abnormal amount of sacks per pressure, which is usually not sustainable. But I mean, look, there's no hiding the fact that like Broderick Jones has clearly proven that like he can struggle against pretty much anybody in pass protection at this point, like just with the way that he's playing. So definitely don't want to take him, for granted. And like the way that the Giants like built this defense, like they were built to kind of win up front. I mean, you go out and make the splash trade for Burns, and then obviously Kayvon Thibodeau, a top 10 pick, and then Dexter Lawrence, who like, for my opinion, would be, if we were voting today, like would be my vote for Defensive Player of the Year. I think that, leading the NFL in sacks as a nose tackle. I mean, I'm just not sure in the 30 years that I've been, following football or whatever, I'm just not sure that I've ever seen a nose tackle be this type of impactful player in the middle like that. So, yeah, I mean, if the Giants are going to win this thing, they're going to have to dominate with the pass rush, and we'll see what that looks like. But I think that's probably the biggest matchup in terms of like offense versus defense.
Yeah, Jones talked today about Ojulari seeming to imply that he's expecting to get hit.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that kind of goes into that discussion then, because I was going to say that's one matchup that obviously you circle. What about we've mentioned Dexter Lawrence so much. Derek, we had a question yesterday. Somebody asking, do we think that they provide extra attention to him, treat him just like any player? What exactly the game plan would be for him? Obviously, you have Ryan McCollum in the middle. You have Sayamalo and McCormick flanking Ryan McCollum. What would be the game plan to try to minimize, I can't even say slow down, I don't even know what the word to use is when you talk about the impact Dexter Lawrence has had, but what should the game plan be?
It's really difficult because the Giants do some creative stuff in terms of like getting him one-on-ones, which is like, I mean, it's being a good defensive coordinator. But they do like what I call like boss or like load fronts. So they'll put 3 defensive linemen basically on the same side, and then, basically ensure that, he's going to get a one-on-one on the center. And like, there's just not, I mean, the center is typically your weakest person in your pass protection unit. There's no center that's going to be able to block him one-on-one. It just, I mean, Mike Tomlin said it, like, no offense to Ryan McCollum, even like a guy like Zach Frazier, who's been absolutely fantastic this season. Like, I even think that he would have his clear losses in this matchup if he were to play. But the thing about it is, like, you just have to stay out of 3rd and long. Like, that's the big thing. Because, like, when you get into obvious passing situations, that's where you can see more of the creative fronts, to where you're not as worried about, like, your gap control in terms of, your run fits or things like that. You can kind of just put together whatever plan you think is going to get him the best matchup and ensure that he gets a one-on-one. There's some things you can do. Like, one of the things that I've seen other teams try to do is make sure that they release. So if you're in like 5 or 6 man pass protection, say you're chipping off the edge to get Broderick help, You can try to have your back exit through the A gap. So basically, wherever you see him line up, I mean, he's a power rusher, so it's not like he's going to be on stunts or anything like that. Make sure your back exits through his gap and tries to chip if he does get on the edge of the center. That's helpful. But the problem is, like, once you start getting into that world where you're chipping an edge and then you're also coming out and you're also trying to chip a nose tackle, then you're only really getting like 3 people out on the route. And then if you're in 3rd and long, you're probably going to see some type of like zone coverage where you're, encouraged to throw short. So it just gets a lot more intricate in that. So just stay out of 3rd and long. That would be like my best thing. And the other thing about the run game is, like, I think they're going to have to be very, very specific in the ways that they run at him. Like, Lawrence is not a guy that can be double teamed. So it's not as simple as like, hey, we're just going to run a bunch of gap stuff and make sure we get him double teamed. He's somebody that can't really be moved off the point. So you almost kind of want to run away from him when applicable as well. It's really difficult to run right at him. So he's a great player, man. Like, he's awesome.
Yeah, and I would say not only that, but in the difference between Ojulari and Burns and the run D, I'm running like at Ojulari all game. Like, Broderick Jones is a much better run blocker than he's a pass blocker. I think if you put Darnell over there, I think that's a matchup the Steelers can really win. And I want Dexter Lawrence running sideline to sideline as much as possible. I'm not running anywhere near him, and away from Burns as well. So I think that's something the Steelers can exploit. The other thing I mentioned yesterday, I think, good week for like some screens and things like that. Anything to kind of make that defensive line run around as much as you can.
The way we've talked about this matchup with the 2 guys that we've discussed on this Giants defensive line, you would think that this is a much better football team than they actually are. So I think we've done a good job somewhat talking up the Giants here. So let's flip the script on that and say, where do the Steelers have the advantages then on the offense, where you think they could take advantage of them and exploit them? Deonte Banks, by the way, who Derek and I liked a ton, got called out a little bit by the coaching staff. And
not a little bit, a lot.
Called out a lot. Over the last week. They said he's still going to play on Monday night and stuff, but that's not a good sign. Getting the Antonio Pierce on Jack Jones treatment. But anyways, where do the Steelers on offense hold the advantages here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good shout. I mean, their nickel rookie, Drew Phillips, has been a good player for them early on. He's made a bunch of plays in the backfield. You've seen like kind of the aggressiveness and the quick twitch come out from him. But on the outside, the Giants have kind of struggled a little bit at times. Banks has had, at least from what I've seen on film, he's had a lot of plays where he hasn't given up a ton of separation. There are some like ugly losses, but like down to down, it doesn't seem like he's getting beat too often. One of the major things that like did hold me up a little bit on Banks, even though I did have him ranked higher than the consensus, was just that he struggled to find the football in the air, and I think that that's kind of still a problem for him. Like, there are times where he's in phase in the hip pocket of the receiver, but just isn't finding the football. Kind of problematic because we just saw Russell Wilson throw the ball to George Pickens on 50-50 balls, like, I don't know how many times last week, 5 times or something like that. I think that there was a very clear game plan last week. I thought Arthur Smith called a really good game, did a good job to get the ball in his best playmaker's hands. I thought Russ did a good job to give George some 50-50 chances, and I think that they were very intentional about getting him the targets that I think that he probably wants. So don't be surprised if they try to just rip off an explosive player to throw in at Banks just to try to see if, he can hold up with the ball in the air.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody can really hold up with George in that environment, but Banks has struggled with like everybody on those. So I think that's a clear advantage. The other thing I think is a clear advantage is like this. If the Giants don't get pass rush, very much like the Steelers, the entire sort of house of cards is built on getting pass rush. If they do not get pass rush, I think I like every Steelers receiver down. And like, you're not going to say that very often, but like Freiermuth, I like his matchups. I like Calvin Austin's matchup. Like, there isn't really a secondary matchup that worries me if the Steelers can protect Russell Wilson, because so much of what the Giants do is just, hey, none of the rest of this stuff matters because we're going to get to the quarterback in 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, one more thing about Banks, too, is, I think it's one thing, too, for a corner to be kind of going through some, like, up and downs, like, early in his career. I mean, we see that quite often. But the Giants, like, they've really they need him to be like a number one guy, like right off the bat, and they're showing that because he's shadowing other teams' best receivers. So it's also kind of tough because it's like they're putting him in the most tough matchups, but he's also like not playing probably up to his standard or capabilities from an athletic standpoint. I think the effort thing is concerning more than anything else. I mean, it sucks. Like when you have a first round pick like that needs to be called out in the media, from your head coach, from your teammates, everybody sees what you're putting on film. That would concern me more than anything else at this point. But yeah, I mean, the Steelers are going to take their shots, his direction. I just think it's interesting because like you look at the matchups, I forget where it comes from, if it's Next Gen Stats or if it's Pro Football Focus, but I saw a tweet saying that like he's the only corner I think in the league this year that has shadowed on every single game that they played. And like shadow rate is just like you following the other team's like number one receiver outside to outside, left, right, whatever. So they're putting a lot on his plate. We'll see if he's up for the matchup. Sometimes like players can get up for primetime matchups or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm interested to see what the film looks like. I think the Steelers have an advantage though.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Giants offense going against the Steelers defense a little bit here then. Malik Nabers coming back. He's a good player. That's about the only good thing I can say about this Giants offense. I do like Tyrone Tracy a bit. He's a bigger back. Interesting to see how he kind of matches up. But the offensive line has been dreadful for the Giants over the last few weeks after starting out okay. Daniel Jones is Daniel Jones. I like Theo Johnson. I know Alan likes Theo Johnson. Derek, where are you at with the Giants offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing, if you're looking at ways that the Giants could potentially threaten this game a little bit, I mean, it's Malik Nabers. I mean, just super, super talented. I think that by the time next year starts, I think we'll be looking at like a consensus top 10 wide receiver in the league. I think he's that good already. I think the film's already kind of showed that. I know he missed some time with the concussion, but he got off to just a blazing start. Everything that you saw in his LSU film is kind of translated over. And like when things translate over that quickly, you probably have a pretty special player. I think he moves like a really special player after the catch. Slap fades are kind of all within his wheelhouse. Thing about Nabers is like he's also really good at the catch point. So like he can do pretty much everything. He tracks the ball extremely well down the field, can high point, dunk on smaller defenders. They like to move. They're very creative in the ways that they get him the ball. So early in the season, they're moving him around the formation. He always, at least for me, when I watched the first couple games, I just watched Daniel Jones targets more than anything. But it always seemed like he was early in the progression. So they were being intentional about how they were placing him in formations and in the progression. Just a special player, man. You got to make sure you keep a lid on the explosive plays. He created a ton of those at LSU last year. And then if you're looking for like a recipe for an upset, that's what it is. Like you get two of those explosive plays. He takes a slant to the crib. He takes a slap fade for 60 yards and a touchdown, something like that. But just keep a lid on that and that stuff. And I think you'll be okay because like you said, they got Daniel Jones at quarterback. There's very few quarterbacks in the league that I hate watching more than Daniel Jones, and it's been honestly painful for me to sit through that this week.
Yeah, I mean, good things about Malik Nabers, and I do. I don't think Darius Slayton's a bad wide receiver too. I think he'd look pretty good in a Steelers uniform. I do like Theo Johnson as a young tight end. This offense stinks. It's terrible. I mean, like that. Daniel Jones is not very good, but they can't protect him either. And while he can run away, he's not very good at throwing under pressure. This should be dominance with the Steelers defense against this offense. Like I think the Steelers defense should feel bad if they give up any points. That's what I feel. I feel like the Steelers defense right now should be in their meetings like, these guys should leave this game with 0 points, 4 turnovers, and 150 total yards, or else we screwed up somewhere. Like, that's how bad this offense is.
Here's the deal, because I already know it's coming in the comments. If we say that it's going to be a close game, or if any of us don't pick the Steelers, people are at everybody's neck. If we say that the other team's terrible, everybody's going to be in the comments saying, "Oh, this is a classic Mike Tomlin loss. Y'all are taking it for granted." Da, 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 da. We can't win. But no, Alan made a great point about the pressure thing. You mentioned Darius Slayton. He's a guy that I actually kind of have been studying for Steelers purposes too. It is hilarious. Like Darius Slayton can flat out fly. He can run past probably about 95% of the corners in the NFL. Daniel Jones is just awful throwing the ball deep. Like he's just a terrible deep ball thrower. I don't know if that's always been the case, but it is the case this year and was the case last year before he got hurt.
Was the case at Duke when they should have never drafted him where they drafted him.
I mean, it's just terrible. But like you look at just the numbers, like Alan was talking about, like just throwing under pressure. Anything, I mean, he is under pressure probably more than he should be. The Giants have been a dumpster fire on the offensive line for quite a while now, due to some busts and some things like that, like drafted Evan Neal. He hasn't turned into the player many people expected. But let me just show you guys this. He's been under pressure on 100 dropbacks this season. He is 33 for 73, meaning he's taken however many sacks and scrambles. He is averaging, get ready for this, 4.0 yards per attempt against pressure this year. 0 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays. 21 sacks.
And he's going to be under pressure basically every drop back.
Yeah, I mean, this is a recipe for like a catastrophic disaster, to be honest with you. I mean, regardless of, I think Illuminor has given them some stability on the right side. Like, I think that he's a very solid caliber starting right tackle in this league. But TJ Watt gave him some trouble last year after he got off to that hot start. They played Vegas. Watt got him a couple times in that game. Watt's going to still require you to send doubles or chips or however you want to say, turn the protection towards him or whatever. But like, they're not going to have another dude at left tackle, regardless of who they put out there. I think they're planning on playing Josh Azudu. I think I'm saying that right. But he's a guard by trade. And this is part of the reason why I'm writing about Alex Highsmith this week. But I think that he has a huge matchup advantage there. Azudu gave up a couple sacks early in the game last week. So it's best of luck to you, Daniel Jones. I don't think you're very good, but this is a really tough spot to be put in if you're a quarterback.
The numbers that you laid out, you wouldn't have had to put the name attached to it. Just said, "Hey, who is this?"
And you didn't know.
That's Daniel Jones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, Derek, are you saying that Azudu is Edudu?
Zinger.
Sorry.
+1.
Alan, go ahead. It looked like you're about to say something.
No, I just think this is the other thing about this Giants team is that, like, okay, so if you're not very good at protecting your quarterback and you would think to run the ball. And although I like Tracy, like, they don't run block either. And their running back, their running backs are not, like, when this team had Saquon Barkley, it had something. I don't even know, like, what, like, I look at this offense and it makes me angry that someone went in, like, even remotely close to being, like, good. And that's even before, like, they lost Andrew Thomas. Like, what was the intention here? I don't know how the Giants, and I have a lot of respect for the Mara family, but, like, it came out with a statement this week to say, like, we're not going to fire Dable and Schoen.
Yeah,
and I'm like, the guy that gave Daniel Jones that contract and put this offense together, you're not going to fire him? Really? Okay. Like, all right, you do you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we brought up Tyrone Tracy. He's a very interesting player to me, just because of the explosiveness. Like, he has a receiver background. He can do some really creative things in terms of, like, what we talked about, recipe for an upset. It really requires you to hit some explosive plays. But again, like, he is still kind of figuring the finer aspects of running the ball out. And I do think that he's probably ahead of, like, the trajectory for this type of player, but not in every down back. Devin Singletary is a guy who can keep you on schedule a little bit, but he's not necessarily a huge creator in his own right. You just look at the Giants, like, by, like, success rate and things like that. I mean, they're middle of the pack. They're 16th. They're a little bit ahead of where the Steelers are. But I just go back to my point of, I know the Steelers have started every game slow for the past however many X years. I just think that this is a game where they should be able to take control early. And if you can make this Giants team one-dimensional, like I said, I think it should be a bloodbath. I mean, I hate to say that, just sounding overconfident, but there's just, other than a Malik Nabers just generational run on Monday night. It's difficult for me to see this happening. And the Steelers too, like I think that they've done a really good job against like quarterback scrambles. Now, again, I think all of the Steelers numbers, and I think this is a very good defense. I think all of the Steelers numbers need to be taken into a little bit of a grain of salt, because the offenses that they have played have been terrible. They have played some horrific quarterbacks so far this season, but they've been really good about like mitigating scramble opportunities too. That's something that Daniel Jones likes to do. He likes to scramble, extend plays with his legs. The Steelers got 2 linebackers that run 4-4. Like it's going to be difficult to do that, especially when you're playing a bunch of spot drop cover 3. It's going to be difficult to extend plays and make things happen with your legs when the Steelers are kind of built to withstand that. So just some of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I want to go back to Malik Nabers real quick, just before we get into the predictions. What would the plan of attack be for you there? Like, does Joey shadow him pretty much with safety help over top? I mean, Darius Slayton's no slouch, like Alan mentioned on the other side. I'd love to have him as the Steelers wide receiver 2 here, but what's the plan of attack for Malik Nabers for you?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be really creative, I would imagine, in terms of like getting him some easy targets just to get the ball in his hands, because he is their most dynamic player. So I would probably expect him to be motion around the formation, maybe even more this week. I mean, Beanie Bishop played well last week too. Like that's a intriguing thing for me. I would expect Joey to shadow him when they're in like third and passing situations. Like even if he's inside, I think that Joey can move inside with him and then just put your best on the best and force Daniel Jones to go elsewhere. That's the other thing is like, Darius Slayton's a guy who can run deep, but Deonte Jackson's pretty fast still. And like the way that you kind of get after Jackson is that you can get after him with some double moves. Like that's always been like his thing throughout of his career, but it's difficult to run double moves when you can't hold the ball for longer than 3 seconds against his pass rushes. Like that's another thing is it's just really difficult. Wan'Dale Robinson's a nice player too, like, but he's more of a, I'm just going to get like, you can pepper him with completions to stay ahead of the chains, but he's not like, he hasn't been overly dynamic when he has touched the ball. A lot of his catches haven't necessarily been good plays for the offense. So, I mean, I would probably put Joey on him in passing situations. And just, again, the Steelers have done a good job tackling. They didn't do a good job tackling on Sunday night in the first half. We're much better in the second half. Got to make sure you wrap these guys up. Nabers is one of those dudes, too. Like, he's got a turbocharger on his back, but at the same time, like, he's really strong through arm tackle. So you have to get this dude on the ground. But he's the number one focus for me. You stop him. He can get his. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he's still got 70, 80 yards or something like that. Just don't let him completely take over the game and kind of nuke this thing.
Yeah, the Steelers have been really good at keeping a lid on it too, and I think that's the one area where if you're the Giants, you kind of like if we're not going to be able to do anything consistently, just try to throw 100 deep shots and see if like you connect on 5 of them. But like, the Steelers have been fairly good at not giving up big plays, and I think that's a big part of their success on defense. So, yeah. It's not only is this Giants defense or offense not very good, I don't think it's a particularly good matchup for them either.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's get into some predictions, both score-wise, and then you know the drill. We got to get at least one bold prediction from everybody as we go around the round table here. Who wants to? You know what? I'll start this week for this because my bold prediction is going to be one of those things like Derek mentioned where you're going to have people in the comments saying, this is a trap game or whatever. We're going to have a talking point coming out of this game be that the Steelers don't need to trade for a receiver because Van Jefferson 2 receiving touchdowns in this football game.
Oh my gosh.
He's going to have 3 catches, 18 yards, 2 touchdowns.
All right. I'm going to let Alan rock with that because I need a second to compose myself after that.
If he had not gotten tripped last week, he would have nearly had that exact line.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's reasonable. It's also probably not going to happen. Like, I understand where your head's at, but no.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah.
Are you going to give your game prediction first as well? And then we'll...
Yeah, you know what? Sure. This is tough because, again, any points that the Giants get, I feel like the Steelers aren't going to feel good about it, giving up any points. But I think they're going to score some. I'm going to go Steelers 33, Giants 10.
I'll go next. I'll go next. I think that's a good. I'm not sure the Steelers are going to be able to score that much. I think the Giants will do just enough to disrupt things with their defensive line. I'm my bold prediction. I don't know how bold this is. If you guys tell me it's not bold enough, I'll go another one. Russell Wilson has his first turnover this week. I think the Giants will get him for at least one. Yep. I'm going to go Steelers 27-6. I think it'll be total dominance by the Steelers defense, but I think there could be some stretches like we saw against the Jets where this becomes kind of a battle of punters for a little while there. I think the Steelers will have a little bit of difficulty staying like they're going to give up negative plays, and this is not a good offense when it gets behind the chains.
Oh man. Okay.
Derek's picking the Giants.
Not picking the Giants. I'm gonna say 27-13 Steelers. Bold prediction. I gotta start thinking of my bold predictions before I jump on the podcast. Smitty, when you send me the reminder for the pod, you need to remind me to get a bold prediction together.
You need at least one bold. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I don't even remember what my bold prediction was last week. I think it was something like sacks related.
Highsmith.
Okay.
Yeah, you said Highsmith would have at least 1.5.
Okay. I'll say this. Okay. I'll do a little combo. I'll say that Dexter Lawrence and Keeanu Benton, so stick with the nose tackles theme. I'll say that they combined for 3 sacks Monday night.
Okay. You know what's interesting about that?
I don't know if Benton has one this year. Does Benton have one this year?
He does.
He's been better than what his box score indicates. Like he's winning more rushes, I promise. But I think that he's getting really close. Like he had a really quick pressure last week that probably could have resulted in a sack, but A-Rod was getting the ball out pretty quick. And then like my guy Ryan McCollum, I hope he's ate his Wheaties this week. Get plenty of rest, brother. It's gonna be a battle. Just don't let the dude wreck the game. Stay out of 3rd and long. But like Alan said, I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that even though I think the Steelers offense could potentially put a full game together against this defense, even though I think the Giants defense is solid, I just think that their offense just consistently puts them in bad situations. I don't know, man. I just think that there's going to be a couple 3rd and longs early, and it's going to be rough. So I think that's something I'll be looking for.
Okay. All right, I like it.
You want another, also, the first time since my bold prediction was not very bold.
Yeah, go ahead.
Since my bold prediction was not very bold, I'll add one. Jaylen Warren more all-purpose yards more scrimmage yards than Najee Harris in this one.
Okay. There we go. Feels like a Jaylen Warren week for sure. All right. Before we get out of here, of course, as always, Derek, tell the people they can find you.
At Steelers_DB on Twitter and YouTube. And then you can find all my written work at SteelersNow.com.
You can find him at Acrisure Shore Stadium on Monday as well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about Andy Isabella, which I feel like I need to bring up because
go ahead.
It's one video
Andy,
on the YouTube
bring up
channel
Andy
here.
Isabella as our outro. There we go.
Andy Isabella, he took his first rep as a Pittsburgh Steeler, and my camera was right there as he got out of stretching, went into the ball security line, and the first strike from tight ends coach Alfredo Roberts fumbled the ball. And it reminded me of, do you remember, and you guys made Alize Mack was a tight end from Notre Dame, and the Steelers signed him into their practice squad in season, very similar to this. And this was back when James Daniel was the Steelers tight ends coach, and he used to do this drill where they had like a cattle cage. The tight end had to like go through. It was like supposed to like about pad level, right? You want to stay low, and then you hit the sled coming out of the cattle cage. and the sled was pushed up so that like the only way out of the cattle cage was to move the sled. And Alize Mack goes in the cattle cage, hits the sled goes nowhere, Mack goes nowhere, he can't get out, and Mike Tomlin is standing there watching the whole thing and goes like, do they not block at Notre Dame or something like that? And it was like, and Alize Mack had been like a relatively high draft pick. Like it was like a guy that you were interested in seeing what he looked like. And it was like, okay, 1 rep, no one's interested anymore. I feel like it was very similar for Andy Isabella today. It was like Zach Azani was like, bleeping newbie, and like it just you're looking at it like, that was the start, huh? That was rep 1.
I quoted your video and just said you can't make this up, and that just those words got 1.2K likes. Steelers fans are fed up with the Steelers wide receiver position. But yeah, that's tough for Andy. And I saw another, because there was like a quote that came out, I guess, that said something about like he still plans to go play for the Battlehawks if he doesn't make the Steelers 53-man roster or something like that. Somebody quoted and said, well, enjoy your time with the Battlehawks. Like right after that clip surfaced. So anyways, that's good stuff. Anyways, Alan, tell the people they can find you.
I really like Andy Isabella too. I interviewed him at the combine coming out. He's a nice guy.
Maybe you should start covering the team with you. I don't know, but
thinks the game at a high level. I think he could be a coach.
There we go.
We'll see. Saunders_PGH on X is where you find videos like that, as well as here on the YouTube channel. Instagram and TikTok as well. SteelersNow.com is where all the written stuff lives. And PGH Steelers Now is the site's account.
There we go. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you are here on YouTube so you don't miss a video or an episode of one of the shows that we do, Afternoon Drive, Morning Rush, all that good stuff, and then Sights and Sounds, practice videos, yada, yada, yada. Also, leave us a comment, your thoughts on anything that we talked about today, your prediction, your bold prediction, or question for a future episode. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. Of course, just search Steelers Afternoon Drive the same way that you can find us on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders, Derek Bell, and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.